Most companies don't die from competition, but from the illusions that they never question. Let me explain. I have a lot of conversations about scaling companies. I myself have been part of hypergrowth, blitzed scaling, a unicorn company, and I've seen it all. I've also seen the exact opposite. 80% downsizing, premature scaling gone wrong, and then companies turning their fortunes around, getting acquired again. So there are certain dynamics that you will find, certain commonalities between companies that scale the right way and companies that scale themselves to destruction. And it really starts with the worldviews and beliefs that run the operating system of those companies. Now, when we hear scaling, the first thing that comes to mind for a lot of people is the company keeps growing bigger. More headcount, more employees. The company used to be 5 employees and now it's 500 in 10 markets. They scaled. When we hear scaling, we think about revenue. They used to be selling door to door and now they make 10 million annual recurring revenue. Impressive. They did it. They scaled. When we think about scaling, we think about they used to work out of a garage, out of a basement, couple of friends. Now they have an office in a prime location of the city. They scaled. They made it. So scaling sparks our imagination. Scaling sounds tempting. Scaling is something desirable. It looks like success. If I scale, I made it. I want to scale. But what if there's a bit more to the story? And ultimately, scaling is not just about getting funding round after funding round after funding round for different reasons. If you take it a step back, you think about what are we actually doing here? What is the purpose of a commercial organization? Now, some people would say to make money. If making money is the core purpose of a business, then you operate it in the way that makes money, with often very little regard for customers, sometimes not even for your reputation. You just do what needs to be done, and you typically play short-term games. What if the purpose of a company is to add value and solve problems for customers? Then you approach the market a bit differently. You play a long-term game. You get rewarded by those customers. Your reputation grows over time. You not only make new customer acquisitions, but you actually build retention. You get repeat sales, you get referrals, you get upselling. So your whole understanding of scaling really starts at the source code of your company, of how you see your company. What is your strategic intent, your intention? It plays a really big role in how everything else plays out over the course of your company's evolution. And so once you have that clear and you see a long-term gain for your company and not just short-term extraction from anybody who has a pulse and a credit card, but you actually see long-term relationships as a centerpiece, your long-term reputation within an industry, a market, a geography as the centerpiece of your commercial strategy, now you approach scaling also a bit differently than just adding headcounts, opening new office locations, and chasing the next funding round. Scaling, in a nutshell, should allow your company to do things at a greater volume without breaking. So what does that mean? If I make more sales, it should not break my company's neck because my costs are spiraling out of control. There are companies in which every single time they sell something, they actually lose money because the costs of the sale is higher than the actual revenue that they're getting for the sale. And these costs include their marketing spend, their sales commission, their costs of delivery, costs of goods sold. So every single time they acquire a new customer, they actually, in theory, pay the customer in order to be a customer of the company, and they're losing money. Now, if you scale that, if you don't fix the fundamentals, the processes, and you scale your loss of money, you're literally scaling dysfunction. And I've seen this in practice. It is often the most dangerous decision that a founder or an executive team can do. It is to prematurely scale. Scale when the company is not ready. Scale when the cycles, the baseline cycles, are not finished. Scale something that is still very chaotic. You just end up scaling chaos. Scaling is like a magnifying glass. Whatever you're doing right now in the small manners will then just explode on a worldwide scale or into multiple markets. And it will be way harder to fix a structure afterwards when hundreds of employees, thousands of clients, thousands of investors are involved, than fixing it now and building it right from the get-go. So the first condition for scaling anything is get it right. I'll give you a very quick example that might be relatable. If you've ever worked on spreadsheets and you build financial models or sales forecasts or commission models, whatever it is, if you build anything on a spreadsheet and you start building one version of it, and hopefully it's good, you now start duplicating it and you start recreating it for multiple months in the future or for different markets. You start multiplying the same file multiple times to use it as a template. Now, if you've done a good job, if it is proper, then you will be able to use this template, and after you have copied and duplicated it 1,000 times, it will still be good. If it was just a sloppy version 0.5, you're now scaling complete chaos. Everybody of all the stakeholders who will see your spreadsheet will say, oh, this needs to be changed, that needs to be changed. And now how do you retroactively fix every single spreadsheet that is used by hundreds of different people? You can't, because you scaled something that was not ready. And the parallel to organizations is very striking. Your sales process that is not properly thought through, that is not properly matured, your marketing approach that is not properly matured. If you scale that, if you put money into it, if you hire more people for it, if you just use the same dysfunctional model and export it into new markets, new offices that you're opening, you will just have a way harder time to fix it afterwards. Real scaling means that you have the fundamentals under control, and that actually when you scale in volume, things are not breaking, but actually your costs are decreasing due to economics of scale. Your everything, your processes, your workflows become more efficient because you scale, because you operate at more volume. Anything that is not properly codified or thought through in terms of processes, systems, ways of doing things that is being scaled will just fall apart. And at some point, the executive team and the founders lose control of the company. And you see this often when companies are held together by duct tape or by force of personality or by brute force, which means shouting, yelling, pressuring, and so forth. An example where you see this also very often are sales teams, for example. Sales teams that lack process, sales teams that lack systems, sales teams that are not integrated into the ecosystem of the entire company, but that are treated like a silo or like a cash cow production, cash flow production. They are typically just run by pure pressure and emotional blackmail and just pushing people into submission, elbowing them into just doing whatever needs to be done while burning them out and just ultimately reducing their effectiveness incredibly. Like those sales teams typically don't last very long. You will see high turnover, high churn. And this is, for example, this is an example where you do not have a scalable structure. You're not relying on processes, but you're relying on emotions. You're relying on force of personality. You're relying on pressure to get things done. That's not scalable. And whenever you will implement this same model into new markets, into new geographies, it would break as much as it will break in the HQ and in the home market of the company. So before we think of scaling as more people, more offices, more countries, more revenues, we need to think of scaling as get the fundamentals right. Finish the cycles on the ground level that need to be finished. Close them. Make sure that you nail it before you scale it. Make sure that things are in its proper place, that they are reliable and they will not break at volume. Now, certain things are meant to break. That's also clear. Certain processes will break. They will not handle certain volumes. And sometimes that's romanticized as, oh, if we have the problem that we cannot process all of these orders, that's a good problem to have. And it's true. It means you're successful. You have a lot of market demand, you have a lot of revenue. And sometimes you need to adjust processes midway, midstream. They need to be iterated. They constantly need to be adjusted to the new realities. That's absolutely true. But you want to start with a working version before you iterate. If you start with a broken version, it can get really, really tough. Ultimately, when you think about scaling, you want this to tie into your enterprise value as well. Because any potential acquirer or buyer of your company, whether that's private equity, a strategic acquirer, they want to make sure that whatever they are buying when they buy your company maintains its value. That whatever traction you have in terms of revenue, market expansion, growth, whatever it is, even headcount growth, that it is sustainable, and that once a new owner takes over the company, it will last and it will not collapse the day after the acquisition. And you can only do this by having properly documented, codified processes and systems in place that you nailed before you scaled them. That's the work that Strategic X is doing with companies. We're straightening out exactly those messy in-betweens, those messy transition periods where the company needs to reach its next level and fundamentally rethink how it's doing things, how it's operating. And if that resonates with you, you know where to find us.